Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street, random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist. He's exceedingly left-wing, and that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing on economics. Not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting. In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned, abortion is banned, sex changes for transgenderism are banned. It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America. Only El Salvador really comes close, which is much smaller, of course. And by the way, the U.S.-backed opposition leader who would take Maduro's place if he were taken out is, of course, pretty eager to get gay marriage in Venezuela. So to those of you who thought this whole project was globo homo, not crazy, actually. So the average person, when asked, would say, we got to get rid of the guy because his politics are bad, his ideas are bad. We're in favor of democracy. Of course, that's why we're supporting the unelected dictator in Ukraine, because we're for democracy. That's why we had the 2020 election with the drop boxes and the fake mail-in ballots, because we're for democracy. But democracy, because we have a moral obligation to make sure that good government reigns in our hemisphere. That would be the answer. But that's not really a compelling answer. Is that really the reason? So if we see a leader in our hemisphere or anywhere in the world who's dictatorial, who, I don't know, cancels his own citizens, arrest them for saying bad things, we overthrow that person? That's not really the standard. No. Our closest ally in Europe is the UK. And famously, last year, the UK sent 3 times as many people to jail as Russia did for saying naughty things on social media. So the UK, the government of Great Britain under Keir Starmer, is authoritarian. Obviously, it's not a democratic government. You can have a democratic government with censorship by definition, of course. If people can't say what they believe is true, they're not free people. It's not a democracy. They don't own the country. They're under the thumb of a dictator. But there's no move to liberate long-suffering Britons from Keir Starmer. Maybe there should be, but there isn't. So I think we can safely discount democracy as a reason for affecting regime change in Venezuela. We're not going to go kill Nicolas Maduro because we don't like the way he's treating his people. It's possible we're mad that he doesn't allow gay marriage. That is a distinct possibility, but no one will say that out loud. So what could be the other reasons? Well, energy. That's the obvious one. Venezuela has the deepest proven oil reserves, the biggest proven oil reserves in the world. Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia does. Now, it's low-grade oil, dirty oil, and its infrastructure, its oil extraction infrastructure, is in terrible shape after 10 years of sanctions and mismanagement by the government, et cetera, et cetera. Again, none of this is a defense of Maduro's economic policies, but they're not that out of whack with a lot of different places, a lot of different countries. In fact, they're not that different from the economic policies of the incoming mayor of New York, actually, to be honest. The big difference is that Nicolas Maduro is a social conservative and Mamdani is all about transing your kids. But whatever. Oil. People say, well, of course it's about oil. Is it about oil? Doesn't seem to be about oil. There are a bunch of American oil companies, big ones and little ones, independent and publicly traded, who would like to get into Venezuela. They can't because of sanctions, but they'd like to change that so they can help Venezuela extract its mineral resources and make money in the process and presumably help the United States in the process. They haven't been allowed to do that. So if your goal was to secure as much oil as you could, as much energy as you could for the United States and help American energy companies build their businesses, employ Americans, of course, you would stop moralizing long enough to let Americans rebuild Venezuela's aging extraction infrastructure. But we're not doing that. So is it really about oil? Probably not. Well, then it's about drugs. That's what we've been hearing now. It's about drugs. Venezuela is a drug-dealing nation. Its regime is involved in drug trafficking. And by the way, sounds true. Probably is true. Is Maduro or people around Maduro involved in the drug trade in some way? Probably. Would think so. How many Latin American heads of state aren't? That's a good question. But that's not an excuse. It's bad. But how significant is Venezuela in the hemispheric drug trade? Like, if you're looking at the drug trade in the United States, how much of that comes from Venezuela? Well, we have a fentanyl crisis, famously. Does fentanyl come from Venezuela? No, it doesn't. Actually, it comes from Mexico. Huh. What about meth? Well, meth also comes from Mexico. What about cocaine? That would be Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia. Not to say that drugs don't come from Venezuela. Of course they do. But most drugs that wind up in this country do not come from Venezuela. They're not produced there. They're not trafficked through there. And the cartels that distribute them and kill people in our country are not Venezuelan. They're Mexican. All of them. The top 5 drug cartels operating in the United States, including the ones that control entire counties in Northern California, huge parts of the American Southwest, Florida, Texas, all over, Northern New England, those are all Mexican. So it's probably not about drugs. What is it about? We should know, not simply to argue against it. I mean, we have no control, clearly. No one is asking the American public whether they want another regime change war. No one is asking Trump voters whether they want another regime change war. Nobody cares. So it's going to happen no matter what people think. In fact, if it does happen, it will likely happen at a time when most Americans had no idea it was about to happen. In other words, it'll be a huge surprise to everyone if this happens. Except those 18 people, if it's even that high a number, who still watch the broadcast television Sunday shows. If you're one of those people, likely someone in intensive care, strapped to a gurney, the attendant's gone out for a cigarette and taken the remote, and you can't change the channel, you may have seen this on Sunday. This is Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, redolent with glee as he describes our plans to kill Nicolas Maduro. Watch.
Venezuela is now partnering with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is running out of money because Iran is weak.
That's not new.
Partnering with drug cartels in Venezuela. No, it should have stopped. Here's what's new. You got a commander-in-chief that's not going to put up with this crap. We're not going to sit on the sidelines and watch boats full of drugs come to our country. We're going to blow them up and kill the people that want to poison America. And we're now going to expand operations, I think, to the land.
We're not going to torture you by replaying that tape, but if you rewind it in your spare time to the point where he says, and I'm quoting, "We're going to kill people," you can see a little shiver of excitement go through his aging frame. We're going to kill people. We're going to kill people, and we're going to kill them, as Lindsey Graham just explained, because Hezbollah in Lebanon. We're going to kill people in Venezuela because Hezbollah in Lebanon. And obviously the security of southern Lebanon is a key American objective. There's probably not 5 people who voted for Donald Trump who didn't do so with the security of southern Lebanon in mind. We've got to get Hezbollah out of southern Lebanon. And anyone who has any connection to Hezbollah must be invaded and killed, of course. And as you learned in school, the main funder of Hezbollah is, of course, Venezuela. Just have a lot in common. Language, religion, proximity. What? I mean, okay. So they're Hezbollah guys in Venezuela. Well, there are Hezbollah guys here. There are Hezbollah sympathizers probably in a lot of different countries. Okay. What does that have to do with us? Have a lot of Americans been killed by Hezbollah in the United States with money from Venezuela? If so, when did that happen? Can you prove it? Can you speak slowly so I can understand it? Can you show me the receipts? Can you give me some explanation for what this is and why we're doing this? Hezbollah! Drugs! So it's a mystery. Clearly there's something going on. One obvious partial explanation is there's a big Venezuelan exile community in South Florida. Super nice people, actually. Some of the nicest people you will ever meet. good values, decent people. They're mad about what happened in Venezuela. They have every reason to be mad about it. A lot of them had all their stuff taken, had to flee to Florida, or a lot of it taken, not all of it, judging by their houses, but good people, for real. Venezuelan exiles, Cuban exiles, or a lot of Latin American exiles in South Florida. They're mad about what happened in their home countries. Totally understandable. Easy to be very sympathetic to them. I am personally sympathetic to them. On the other hand, these are people who just got here. And so why would they be using the U.S. military to settle some score in a country that's not America? It doesn't really seem like the way things should work. America offers you refuge. Great. We feel good about it. You feel good about it. We feel morally superior. You work hard and thrive. And that's kind of worked. But the moment when you decide, well, wait a second, I'm going to use the military power of the country that gave me shelter to fix things in the country I came from, you're going to have to tell me why that's a good idea for me and for everyone else, the hundreds of millions of other Americans who didn't come from anywhere else, who were born here, whose grandparents were born here. Why should we be paying for that? How is that good for us? Shut up. No one ever asked those questions. So it's possible that there's been quite a bit of lobbying by Venezuelan exiles in South Florida to do this. And of course, we know that that's true. But is that really the reason? It feels like there must be something else going on. You don't send the U.S. Navy to go affect regime change because people in 3 counties in one state want it, do you? Maybe there's something else. Not exactly sure what it is. Someone should look into this because it's apparently really important. But let's linger on the last explanation, the stated explanation. You'll notice after Lindsey Graham finished hyperventilating about Hezbollah, whatever that is. By the way, he left out the part about why I should care. Oh, they were behind the 1983 barracks bombing. Okay, yeah, I remember that. That was 42 years ago. There's a lot going on. UPS just laid off almost 50,000 workers. So tell me why Hezbollah is the top of my concern list? Oh, shut up. But after he got done with the Hezbollah part and restoring peace to southern Lebanon, key concern for most Americans, he said this is about drugs, bringing boats of drugs. Now, we already went through the numbers. Of course, there are probably drugs coming from Venezuela. It's a chaotic country. It's a poor country. Per capita income's like $8,000. Yeah, there are drugs in Venezuela. But Venezuela is not where most drugs are coming from. So if you wanted to address the drug crisis in the United States, what would you do? Well, first you would acknowledge it's an actual crisis. More Americans have died, many more Americans have died of drug ODs over the last 100 years than in all wars during that time combined, including the Second World War, where something like 416,000 Americans died, the Korean War, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, all of them put together. We've had far more Americans die from drugs than from all conflicts. So back when 40 years ago, when Ronald Reagan was declaring a war on drugs, now widely mocked, it wasn't totally crazy. This is, in its effect, in its death count, in its toll on America, like a war. And you don't even need to know the numbers to know that. There's not a town in America, there's not a person in America who doesn't know someone who knows someone who's died of drugs. It's destroyed a lot of this country. And so if you were going to use the U.S. military to fight the drug problem, you might start here. If you were going to take the national security state and use its awesome power to fix the drug problem, well, I mean, maybe you could start by deporting drug dealers, because in every state with a drug crisis, the people trafficking the drugs and in many cases selling the drugs are foreign nationals. That's true. That is an industry that's been completely outsourced. It's not Americans anymore. Americans aren't growing weed in Mendocino County. Mexican cartels are growing weed in Mendocino County and Humboldt County. They're not, no, American citizens are not selling meth in New Mexico or fentanyl in Arizona. No, it's Mexican nationals are doing that. Americans aren't selling opioids in Market Square in San Francisco. No, it's people from Guatemala. And none of those people are citizens. Why not deport them? It shouldn't just be people with bad foreign policy views that get deported. Also, we should deport drug dealers. So, that would be a good, precise use, a universally popular use of ICE, it seems to me, is to start with the retail dealers. Oh, but that's not the root of the problem. Depends how you think about it. We don't necessarily have to fix the problem at its root to make people's lives better. If there are drug dealers in front of your kid's school and then the next day they're not there, that's a massive improvement for you and your kids. Did we solve the drug problem? Did we burn the poppy fields? No. But we solved your problem. And solving people's problems is the purpose of government. So let's start there. But maybe even before we did that, we would look clearly at what we're facing. And we would experience the rage and the shame that comes from acknowledging that your priorities are completely backward. Our leaders spend their lives looking across the globe at fading empire and thinking, how do I shore this up? How do I affect change here? How do I knock off that leader? How do I send the CIA paramilitaries or the Delta Force in to do something dramatic? And as they're focused on those problems, they miss what Portland, Oregon looks like, what Portland, Maine looks like, what San Francisco, what every big city in this country looks like. Degraded, filthy, evil. So you have definitely heard about 8 Sleep by now. People are talking about the well-rested people are talking about it. It's a company with one mission: improve your sleep. And it is changing the way Americans get a good night's sleep. And trust me, they need it. So we just received word that their team is launching a new product. It's called the Pod 5. The Pod 5 is an original, totally innovative mattress cover plus a blanket that uses precision temperature control to regulate your body's sleep cycles and give you the perfect night's sleep. It ranges from 55 degrees for the cold plungers among you to the 110 degrees for the sauna fanatics. That means no matter what you prefer, you're covered. And the bottom line is you sleep better by up to an hour. It actually works. The pod also detects snoring and adjusts your bed's position to reduce or stop it. Whoa! Beleaguered ladies across America rejoice as one. Everyone here can tell you there's no better way to be alert, productive, and happy than by getting a good night's sleep, and 8 Sleep can help. Visit 8sleep.com/Tucker. Use the code Tucker to get $350 off your Pod 5 Ultra. If you don't like it, just return it within a month, but you're going to love it. 8sleep.com/Tucker. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.